right, joining me now is market analyst Ebong Eka. He's live in Washington, D.C. this evening. Thanks for being with us. What do you make of this IMF forecast? Do you see the U.S. tax cuts boosting the global economy?
Most definitely. And the IMF had actually believed that the U.S. growth is going to be about 2.7% as a result of the tax cuts. You're starting to see that actual change happen even domestically, with Apple announcing that they're going to repatriate a huge chunk of their cash sitting overseas. JP Morgan has talked about doing the same. A lot of other companies are also going to do the same in order to enrich and invest into their employees, infrastructure, and even domestically at home.
No doubt about it. There will be some very positive effects, as you said, money coming back, new jobs being created. But in the long term, the IMF is concerned that these tax cuts won't yield sustainable results, saying that the initial impact is going to wear off by 2022. What do you think?
Well, nothing's really sustainable in general. The whole goal of the tax cuts is to give the economy a boost, to give businesses, small as well as large and international, a boost, but also to give U.S. companies the ability to compete overseas. We had one of the highest corporate tax rates known to man, and it's crazy where a lot of these companies could go overseas and go to Ireland and other countries and proliferate and grow their businesses and not here domestically. Now, the other thing is this. The IMF may have a point that there's going to be an economic tsunami of sorts. And by that, I mean the tide goes out before the tsunami. There's more beach. Everybody's enjoying themselves and having a party. But there's always something to pay for later when the water all comes back, destroying everything. That makes sense. But in the same token, this gives other businesses the opportunity to grow their coffers, to grow and scale, and maybe seek other ways of staying stable.
Right. One of the reasons that the tide may go the other way, as you put it, is the increase in debt levels. The managing director of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, pointing to the troubling increase in debt across many countries. She's warning policymakers against complacency. Do you think there's complacency amongst the Fed, the ECB, the BOA, the BOJ, and such?
There always is. I mean, in general, one of the things the IMF had mentioned is that the countries that have a heavy debt load, those who aren't able to either lower their debt or pay part of it off, they're the ones who are going to actually take a brunt of the beating in like 2020, 2022, and later on. And so the countries that actually have a good, stable economy, it's the same thing that goes with having strict and important geopolitical stability, sovereign stability, as well as having a market that actually leads to improvements in empowering the lower to middle class. If you don't have that in those other countries, you're going to have situations where they have to borrow in order to run their government. And then this is actually the market taking the possibility to discipline those people or those countries who aren't actually being good stewards of debt.
Well, your focus is on sovereign and debt here, and I get that point. Now, we're already seeing the Fed start to raise interest rates. So what happens when interest rates in the U.S. and elsewhere really start to rise? There is some concern out there that we're on the verge of a corporate bubble bursting soon.
There is. And the thing is this, the corporations that actually have a stable business, where they have revenues that are growing, and they're based on market forces and not on the idea that the company is doing well. So in other words, manufacturing, if you're focused on manufacturing, you may have a problem. If you're focused on industries that actually don't have growth potential, that's where you're going to see a lot of the problems. And so we will see a problem with a corporate bubble in some spaces. And yes, lowering the tax gives the incentive and gives them more money to invest in other avenues. But we're seeing some companies who are actually doubling down in the sense of in pharmaceuticals and going after cancer fighting drugs. Things of that nature are actually will help the economy stay stable.
Ebong, we saw the market rally today, completely brushing off that relatively short-lived government shutdown. Do you think there is any economic damage from that?
Not really. The thing is, most of the companies in the indices, they know that this is part of political theater. They also know that the reason why the government shut down had absolutely nothing to do with funding the government, and had a lot to do with DACA, Dreamers, as well as maybe the children health insurance plan. Other than that, when those two areas are taken care of, you're not going to see a huge problem with from the standpoint of the corporations who are in the indices.
All right. Thank you so much, Ebong Eka, market analyst. Appreciate it.